Storyboarding, animating, and writing a TV show can be very stressful, especially if your show's already been on for a few years, and especially if you've already went through 48 different writers and 8 different showrunners through just 8 seasons. It can be very hard to keep things straight and hard to explain nuance in the story to those writers that came on later. It's even more difficult to keep things fresh throughout the years even with these new writers, leading to people trying to shake things up. Hey everybody, and welcome to Bed Talk, the talk show where we talk on my bed. And today, we're talking about how too many new writers trying to reinvent and freshen up a series produced a single episode that betrayed the trust of viewers after 8 years worth of television. April 19th, 1987. The Tracey Ullman Show debuts The Simpsons, a short cartoon segment that appeared multiple times, shown before and after commercial breaks through seasons 1 and 2, and being upgraded to their own full segments in season 3. With the final short being aired May 14th, 1989, The Simpsons was bumped to its very own half-hour series with their first episode, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, premiering December 17th, 1989.
How you doing, Fred? Yeah, excuse me, Fred. Oh, pardon my galoshes.
Season 1, 1989 to 1990. 13 episodes. Unrefined. With the writers finding their footing on how to take these characters that have only been exposed to the population in short clips and figuring out how to have the world accept the typical American family into their homes, Fox was worried on the ability to keep audiences entertained, and, to keep their attention, proposed the episodes be made of 3 7-minute shorts per episode and 4 specials for the audience to adjust, to going from one short an episode on The Tracey Ullman Show to a full long-form TV series. However, thankfully, the producers went all in and asked for 13 full-length episodes. My 3 favorite episodes from this season were The Telltale Head, Life on the Fast Lane, and Moaning Lisa. Writers for this season included Mimi Pond, John Vitti, Jay Kogan, Wallace Wolodarski, Al Jean, Mike Reiss, John Swartzwelder, Sam Simon, George Meyer, and Matt Groening.
Well, as Mrs. Krabappel already mentioned, the name of the book that I read was Treasure Island.
Season 2, 1990 to 1991. 22 episodes. Success. The Simpsons was moved from Sunday to leading off Thursday. Effort was put into the first season with love and care, and it paid off, giving The Simpsons a new time slot, leading off a day of Fox's new additional day of programming, airing at 8 p.m. on Thursdays. The Simpsons, however, would have to go up against another powerhouse in The Cosby Show, only beating The Cosby Show in ratings one time during this season, with The Simpsons airing 3 Men and a Comic Book, and The Cosby Show airing a rerun. Also introduced in this season was the Trios of Horror series, which on premiere garnered 27.4 million viewers in the US alone. With the continued care given to the series, it resulted in the first of many Emmys for the episode Homer vs. Lisa and the Eighth Commandment. My favorite episodes of this season were Lisa's Substitute, One Fish, Two Fish, Blowfish, Bluefish, and 3 Men and a Comic Book. Writers for this season included David M. Stern, John Vitti, John Swartzwelder, Jay Kogan, Wallace Wolodarski, Sam Simon, Ken Levine, David Isaacs, Jeff Martin, George Meyer, Nell Scoville, Al Jean, Mike Reiss, Steve Papoon, Brian K. Roberts, and Edgar Allan Poe.
After meeting your father, I've decided to award you an additional 5 points.
Season 3, 1991 to 1992. 24 episodes. Steady. Building off the success of the writing of Season 2, Season 3 brings us incredible episodes such as Like Father, Like Clown, Lisa's Pony, Radio Bart, and Homer Defined. Also this season, Al Jean and Mike Reiss, who had previously written for the show, took over the season as the lead showrunners, and it paid off, earning The Simpsons its most successful year at the Primetime Emmy Awards, with 6 Emmy wins, all for outstanding voiceover performance, as well as 3 Emmy nominations, while also earning an Annie Award, an Environmental Media Award, and a People's Choice Award. My favorite episodes this season were Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington, Lisa's Pony, and Colonel Homer. Writers for this season included Al Jean, Mike Reiss, George Meyer, John Vitti, John Swartzwelder, Jay Kogan, Wallace Wolodarski, Jeff Martin, Sam Simon, Ken Levine, David Isaacs, Robert Cohen, David M. Stern, Matt Groening, Thomas Chastain, and Howard Gerwitz.
Looks like we got ourselves a troublemaker.
Season 4, 1992 to 1993. 22 episodes. Loss. Jay Kogan, Wallace Wolodarski, and Jeff Martin all left at the end of this season. David M. Stern and John Vitti, along with Al Jean and Mike Reiss, still acting as showrunners, also left, but did come back to write in later seasons. This season also gave Conan O'Brien, Frank Mula, and future showrunners Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein their first writing credits for the show. And, with all these new writers coming in and all these new writers getting out, you'd think the writings and episodes suffered, but you'd be wrong. The 4th season of The Simpsons has a 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and if I could add one more word to describe the season, which I will, because, well, it's my video, I'd choose monorail. My favorite episodes from this season were Camp Krusty, Mr. Plow, and Marge vs. the Monorail. Writers for this season included David M. Stern, Jeff Martin, George Meyer, Al Jean, Mike Rice, Jake Hogan, Wallace Wolodarski, Sam Simon, John Vitti, John Swartzwelder, Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, Conan O'Brien, Gary Apple, Michael Carrington, Frank Mula, and Adam L. Lapidus.
Ah, the last peanut, overflowing with the oil and salt of its departed brothers. Uh-oh. Something's wrong.
Season 5, 1993 to 1994. 22 episodes. Gain. As the seasons rolled over, Al Jean and Mike Rice left to produce their own show, The Critic, and in came David Merkin, along with a whole new group of writers to fill up the production team, after losing multiple of them from the previous seasons. With one episode rolling over from last season, which was the final episode to be produced by the original team, which was the episode Cape Fear. Also included in this season is Sweet Seymour Skinner's badass song, the 100th episode of the series. My favorite episodes were Cape Fear, Homer Goes to College, and Boy Scouts in the Hood. Writers for this season included Jeff Martin, John Vitti, Conan O'Brien, John Swartzwelder, Greg Daniels, Dan McGrath, Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, Bill Canterbury, George Meyer, Frank Mula, David Merkin, David Richardson, and Jace Richdale.
I can get you home, but you have to do exactly as I...
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
Season 6, 1994 to 1995. 25 episodes. Difference. 10 new writers came on this season, as well as keeping 6 writers from last season. Al Jean and Mike Rice came in to produce 2 episodes as the workload became too much for the main production team to handle. This season also included an episode so disliked by Matt Groening he took his name off of it. What was so bad about it? Well, there was a cameo from Al Jean and Mike Rice's show, The Critic. And since The Critic moved The Simpsons from Thursday back to the Sunday slot they were for the first season, and since it seemed like nothing but a blatant advertisement for a different show that Matt had nothing to do with, he took his name off of it. My 3 favorite episodes from this season were Lisa on Ice, Bard of Darkness, and Itchy and Scratchy Land. Writers this season included Dan McGrath, Mike Scully, John Vitti, John Swartzwelder, Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, Bob Cushel, Greg Daniels, David X. Cohen, Jonathan Collier, David Sachs, Jennifer Crittenden, Brent Forrester, Ken Keeler, Mike Rice, Al Jean, Joshua Sternin, and Jeffrey Ventimiglia.
Bart, no!
What?
Sorry, force of habit. Lisa, no!
Season 7, 1995 to 1996. 25 episodes. Formatless. Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, writers that have been with the show since the beginning, were upgraded to showrunners this season for their knowledge of the show's dynamics. And with this season, they wanted to achieve something in the realm of more realistic episodes centered around and exploring the emotions of the 5 different family members. They also wanted to produce episodes where a high-budget Hollywood movie comes to Springfield, Sideshow Bob miraculously comes back, and an episode where Grandpa Simpson is trying to find the long-lost treasure that him and his war buddies buried years ago. Also included in Grandpa Simpson's war buddies is Mr. Burns for some reason. I don't know why! Also included in this season is 22 short films about Springfield. Yes, this is the season that Steamed Hams is from. My favorite episodes this season were Bart Sells His Soul, Lisa the Vegetarian, and Mother Simpson. Writers this season included Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, John Swartzwelder, John Vitti, Greg Daniels, David X. Cohen, Steve Tompkins, Dan Greaney, Richard Appel, Spike Ferriston, Mike Scully, Ken Keeler, Jennifer Crittenden, Bob Cushel, Jonathan Collier, Brent Forrester, and Matt Groening. Season 8, 1996 to 1997. 25 episodes. Error. This season was very well written and won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Program and Outstanding Individual Achievement in Music. However, this season, despite being one of my favorites, was also the birthplace of the episode that I'm here to talk about. My favorite episodes from this season were Springfield Files, My Sister, My Sitter, and Homer's Enemy. Writers for this season included Dan Greaney, David X. Cohen, John Swartzwelder, Jonathan Collier, Ian Maxtone Graham, Richard Appel, Steve Tompkins, Mike Scully, Steve Young, Reed Harrison, Jennifer Crittenden, Al Jean, Mike Rice, Ron Haig, Donna Carey, and Ken Keeler.
I am very, very proud of the job I did on this episode. This is the best episode of television I feel I ever wrote. I want to be clear on that. I've never backed away from it.
We open the show looking at Springfield Elementary. Principal Seymour Skinner is doing checks to make sure his school is tip-top, making sure the clock isn't running fast, checking to see if the trash cans are uniform distance from the wall. "I have it going on," he says. Superintendent Chalmers enters the teacher's lounge with a secret announcement. Seymour Skinner has been principal for 20 years, and they want to hold a ceremony for him. As the festivities play out, and as Seymour begins to talk, a voice booms from the back of the auditorium. "You're not Seymour Skinner!" And a man dressed in army greens walks through the aisle.
This is about a community of people who like things just the way they are. Skinner's not really close to these people. You know, he's a minor character, but they get upset when someone comes in and says, this is not really the way things are, and they run the messenger out of town on the rail.
Seymour Skinner is, in my opinion, one of the most active minor characters in the entirety of The Simpsons, because he's Bart and Lisa's principal. He's always there. And him and Bart clash all the time because of it. This is shown in the episode Grade School Confidential, when he's asked to keep Edna and Skinner's love affair a secret. But there's also an underlying friendship, because in the episode Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass Song, Bart does get Skinner fired for a prank that he pulls, but Bart also goes out of his way to devise a plan to get his old principal back. So Principal Skinner may be a minor character, but he has major ties to The Simpsons. So, when you change something as major as his backstory and take away the things that give him his quirks and makes him him, it changes how we see him as a character in the future. Also, he dated Marge's sister. If that doesn't give major ties to the main family, I don't know what does.
What I thought was so interesting was that people feel that strongly about these characters.
We feel strongly about these characters because since 1987, we've been fed the story of these people, of this family, of this little town that 48 people meticulously wrote and crafted, including you. For 8 years, people grew with these characters, and when things got stale, they stuck with them because the 4 dozen people that wrote for this show were trusted enough to make it less. I was born in 2000, so I grew up with the Simpsons DVDs as well as watching The Simpsons every Sunday with my family. And I've watched every episode of The Simpsons multiple times. Now, I'm 22 years old now, and Principal and the Pauper is not an episode I elect to skip because it's still history of The Simpsons after all. And when I say history, I mean that chapter in your textbook that your teacher has to send a note home about. And now, the only reason that I'm not going over Season 9, which is the season that this episode aired, and the writers that did their best through 23 episodes to make you forget about this episode, is because Principal and the Pauper was actually a rollover from Season 8, and it was the last episode that Ken Keeler ever wrote for the series. Now, this is where I have to say, I have absolutely no problem with Ken Keeler. At all. He wrote a lot of good episodes for The Simpsons, including 2 of my favorites, which are Two Bad Neighbors and The Mysterious Voyage of Homer. Great episodes, as well as writing some amazing episodes for Futurama. And I think he's a great writer. But I think he's a great writer that decided to stand by a bad decision and an even worse story and tried to come up with every excuse just to justify it. So, there it is. A definitive buildup of what happened, who wrote for the show, and a brief history that all led up to one of the worst television blunders ever. And I'm not saying that this episode ruined The Simpsons forever, because there's still good episodes in the seasons that followed this one. All I'm saying is that the existence of this episode betrayed the trust of the people that watched and kept this show on the air. Declining the viewership and leading to multiple writers trying to create outlandish and far-fetched ideas for this typical American family to experience, to try and bump viewership back up. And they've kind of succeeded. Like I said, I've watched every episode multiple times, and I found a lot of episodes in the later seasons that I would rank even with these early ones. Because of one reason or another, they've either like brought writers on that got into writing because they wanted to write for The Simpsons, or the writers that they had already in-house figured out how to write for this family. Finally. There are missteps and badly written episodes throughout the entirety of The Simpsons from 1989 to whenever it ends. But this one episode that aired on September 28th, 1997, puts a bad taste in every viewer's mouth. Hey, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Bed Talk. If you're here from TikTok, thank you so much for coming on over. I know Bed Talk looks a little different now, mainly just because you can't see me. But I promise you, I'm here, and I'm still talking into a microphone. So don't forget to, hit the follow button for more video essays like this. And I hope to see you guys in the future. Bye.